Hey everyone, in today's episode, we are diving into the fascinating world of executive function. Now, if you were to rewind a few years ago, I would have been like, what is that? I would have no idea what this term is and what we would even be talking about. I would probably think it's something to do with the corporate, business, business world. No. So fast forward a few years now, I understand a lot more than I did about executive function. I had an incredible chat with Seth Perler for this episode, who really, I see him as probably one of the gurus of the executive function world. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the summit that he runs every year, which is obviously all about executive function. We talked about what these skills are and why we simply cannot get through a day without them, no matter if we're a child or an adult. Many people don't realize that executive function challenges are at the root of so many difficulties that our kids face, particularly our neurodivergent kiddos, from things like social skills, emotional regulation skills, even like being organized and motivated for schoolwork or chores or tasks at home. So everything, I want to say everything. We talked about how these challenges are especially difficult and often hidden in our neurodivergent kids. Seth and I talked about some powerful tips that you can start using with your kids straight away to help with executive function challenges. And here's a little teaser. Seth reveals his number one big tip for dealing with executive function difficulties. And it might be simpler than you realize. So trust me, you do not want to miss this episode. Let's just dive in. If you're thinking, what is executive function? Well, let's just go through that very quickly before we jump into the episode. Executive function is the many skills that our brains use to basically get things done day to day. It's everything from homework, studying and chores, to getting ready for school or tackling responsibilities, playing video games or playing with toys. And obviously for us adults, there's a whole range of things just day to day that mean we can get through our day and be productive and organized and successful. So in other words, it's basically about how we execute complex tasks through to completion. It's also how we prioritize important things over the fun things or the preferred things, especially when it matters for our future well-being, our quality of life, or our bigger goals. So if a child struggles starting or finishing important tasks, focusing, organizing, managing time, schoolwork, maybe resisting distractions, prioritizing, remembering details, overwhelm emotions, realistic self-awareness, and making good decisions, well, it's because they're still developing executive function skills. So welcome to the Emotionally Intelligent Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Pinto. I'm a mum of two, an author, a speaker, and basically a giant emotional intelligence nerd. I am glad you're here today. It's going to be a really good one. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the Darug Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, work, and record this podcast. I pay my respects to all First Nations people, elders, and ancestors, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and I stand in solidarity towards a shared future. All right. Hey, Seth, how are you?
Hello, Stephanie. Good to be here.
I'm really excited to talk to you. I know, well, at least in my mind, you're kind of like the king of executive function. I don't know, is that right?
I don't know. But it's my life. I'm committed to it, and I'm committed to serving kids with executive function challenges. And I see it as sort of a missing link that, I was a teacher for 12 years and have a master's in gifted and talented in special ed. And I love quirky kids and neurodivergent kids. And I really love kids who struggle. That's like, I like helping them find out how awesome they are. And so, yeah, executive function is like, I didn't know this as a teacher until the end of my teaching career, but it is like this missing link that all the kids who struggle in some way, shape, or form, it has to do with executive function. When I figured that out, I started asking very different questions about how to support kids.
Okay. So, you know what? I actually have a bit of a similar story. At the end of my career as a therapist, I was a speech pathologist. And only at the end of that did I really understand and start to learn about emotions and behavior and how that affected the kids that I was trying to support and do therapy with. And I was like, why didn't I know this sooner?
Yeah. Yeah. And why don't people know about executive function? That's why I do the work that I do, because I want the world to know about this,
Yeah. Is
which has
executive
to do with emotions as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so is executive function, why do you think why didn't we know about it? Why don't a lot of people still know about it now?
My opinion, I'll tell you my opinion. By the way, if I sound sick, everybody, I am. So, my opinion, and that's all that this is that there's a saying that not everything that's measured matters, and not everything that matters is measured. And that we are in, at least in the United States where I'm at, we are in a school system or a system, a culture and society that has certain beliefs about things. And when it comes to education, we have learning about executive function, training teachers and parents and kids about executive function properly. These things are inconvenient. They don't fit the narrative easily. They don't help the people who do profit from education, the textbook manufacturers, curriculum manufacturers, testing manufacturers, and whole hordes of other massive multi-billion dollar corporations that profit off of this. It's not convenient. It's very convenient to have things like letter grades. Okay, this kid's got an A, B, C, D, or an F. That's pretty convenient. We can give them a percentage. We can say that this is what constitutes a B, and here's a C plus, and and if we measure it, then it matters. But it doesn't necessarily matter. We choose to measure math, science, social studies, language arts, and a few other things. We don't measure creativity, which we really shouldn't, but and we don't teach things that are not easy to measure either. So we don't teach things about like mental health and emotional well-being and relationships and social life and social skills and social development and your own development and how you work and how your brain works and how you learn and how you think. Am I speaking your language? If
Oh my
this is
God.
the podcast, she just made a big face. So.
If you guys could see me, I was like, I knew this would be such a good conversation.
So if you're asking me why we don't teach about executive function, my opinion is that it's not profitable or convenient.
Mm, yeah, good answer. Oh my goodness. Okay,
So welcome to Stephanie's podcast today with the snarky opening there.
I love it. So maybe tell us, for the people who haven't heard about executive function or they're not as familiar with that term, maybe give us your, how would you explain it to parents?
So there's so many ways to define it. A lot of, if you Google it right now, you're going to find a lot of very clinical definitions, which I think are off-putting. And I think that's a part of why we don't talk about it so much as well, is because it is somewhat complicated. But executive function has to do with how our brains, everybody's brain, but even other mammals, dogs, dolphins, cats, have executive function. And it's how the front, if you put your hand on your forehead right now, the front third or so of your brain, the prefrontal cortex or the frontal lobe of the brain, how it helps us to execute tasks, which means executive function, how the brain functions to help us execute. What do we need to execute? You and I are recording right now. We messaged a little bit earlier. I told you I was a little bit sick. If we meet earlier, let's do it. You said, yeah. We got on Zoom, blah, blah. We hit record. We talked a little bit before. We are executing right now. We are planning, we're organizing, we're focusing on details, we are ignoring distractions, we are not being impulsive, we are impulsivity, the opposite side, we are inhibiting certain things, like I want to. This is no offense to Stephanie or anybody, but I want to be in bed resting right now. But I'm inhibiting those feelings. I've upped my energy. I'm present for you. I'm giving you everything I've got in this moment to be here present for you in our recording today. And that it requires a lot of executive function, and in being sick, it's requiring more. So that's essentially what executive function is how the brain helps us to do anything that we're trying to do. But that can even include, people will think, okay, well, homework, chores, writing a paper, keeping a planner, but it also has to do with things like playing video games or hanging out with your friends. So and then when we get a little more granular, we start to say things like planning and organization, time management, and impulsivity and inhibition and self-starting or task initiation or follow through or task persistence. And we start using all kinds of other words. But really and some theorists say that there are 3 executive functions, 5, 8, 10. I talk about 13 or 14 depending on the day. I really don't care because I'm just not that linear of a soul. I care that you walk away having a good understanding of what it is rather than knowing the exact proper ones and stuff like that. I care that you walk away saying, I know how to help my kid. So that's what essentially what it is.
So this is maybe a dumb question. I'm going to ask it for everyone out there. Is executive function something you are born with? Is it something that develops? Is it something you have to work on? Like kids, adults alike? Maybe let's dive into that.
Yeah, the brain. So imagine when we're first conceived, there are two cells. That's all we are, two cells, right? And then the cells start splitting and splitting and splitting, and then we're billions or trillions of cells. I don't know how many cells, but we are these creatures with these all these cells, and the brain, when the brain starts developing, the brain develops from the back forward. So the back, when you're holding a little baby in your arms and you're looking at them, they're starting to learn to track with their eyes. So the occipital cortex is in the back of the head. That's one of the first things that starts developing. But the front part of the brain is the last part of the brain that fully develops, and it develops our whole lifetime until we're about 25 or 30 years old. It's more or less it's done with its main development there, which is really good to know, because if you have a 14-year-old who's really struggling with everything, there's so much hope. There's so much time. Like developmentally, chill out. Like we're good. I mean, don't stop trying to help in a positive way that actually helps. But yeah, so it develops throughout our lifetime until we get to about 25 or 30, and
Mhm. So would there be adults then who still are developing some of these skills, or no, when you're like beyond 30, you should have everything together?
absolutely, you should not have everything together. So, if you think, let's say that you're 50 and you discover, oh my gosh, I have these things called executive function challenges and I have my whole life and yada yada. Okay, so are you at that age going to really go down a rabbit hole of how am I going to get my executive function brain connections to get even stronger and better? I mean, you can think about that, but I don't think that's a winning game. I think that at that point, I mean, you can really, here's the deal. So you got to think about it from a few different lenses. Let's take lens number one, a lens of how do you improve executive function by removing things that interfere with executive function. So let's start there. Let's say that, Stephanie, you have a baseline of executive function. Let's say that I have a baseline, and mine is notoriously horrible, and it's so much better than it used to be in a lot of ways, but it is not natural to me. But I, if I want to improve my executive function today, and you want to improve your executive function today, what can we remove to improve it? Well, we can remove sleepless nights or bad sleep, or mental health issues that we have not addressed as much as we can, and working through traumas, or closing loops, or getting people out of our lives that are toxic, or um, not taking care of our bodies, our nutrition. I mentioned the sleep already. So what can we do to improve having a great, okay, so that's like, what can we remove? Like, we can sort of think of it that way. Like, what things in the body specifically interfere with executive function or cause us friction? So again, sleep, nutrition, exercise, mental health, things that, when we are in a lot of anxiety and depression, for example, our bodies are getting into fight, flight, and freeze a lot, and they're not able to use the prefrontal cortex of the brain, the frontal lobe, very well, because our resources are going to survival needs. So it makes it very difficult to learn and focus and not be cloudy and stuff like that. So one way we can think about improving executive function is sort of like, what can we remove, or what's in the way? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then we can think of things like, what can we add? So that might be, it might be a medication. And I'm not saying that I'm pro or anti-med, but that's something that can improve executive function, or certain types of foods that help us think more clearly, or getting in a good walk or a good run or good physical activity. And then so those sorts of things, like what can add to it. Bear with me, everybody. My executive function is not fully online today. Then um, we can think about how to improve executive function by the environment. So what things can we remove from the environment? For example, you and I are talking right now, and I'm in my office area, And I did not super clean up today because I'm sick, but I think better when my whole area is really clean. So, and when it doesn't have distractions. So my phone is off. Yours is probably off. I don't have tabs open. I don't have music on right now. So those sorts of things in the environment. But also, I have my glasses on in the environment. I have I have my drink here in the environment. I have things but the environment, anything in the environment that's going to help this space be a place where I can do two things. One, minimize distractions. Two, optimize it for focus. So that's how I talk about that. Then we have improving executive function. Let's see if I'm not using notes, everybody. So let's see if my tired brain can do this. But then we have executive function in terms of systems. So I hear a lot of times from students, they'll be like, oh, I've tried using a planner or calendar before. It doesn't work for me. Okay, well, that's an interesting comment. And what it really means is I don't have the experience to know how to use a calendar or a planner. I don't have the skill sets around effective planning. I don't know what it means to plan. I don't have language around it. I just know that this is a thing called a calendar and I'm supposed to write what the teacher says in it. That's not how to use a calendar. There are many skill sets that we use, and there are tons of them. But you and I could teach each other a bunch of basics, and then we could take it from there. So these are skill sets that. And so with executive function, we want to learn systems and skill sets for organization and planning and these sorts of things that we can then master or get better at, so that we have a level of ability in using these systems so that we can execute on things. So let's take one more example. Let's say self-starting. It might be very hard for you and I to start certain tasks. So what's a task that's hard for you to start, Stephanie?
Oh man. Looking at my bank and like my finances and working out like tax stuff at the end of the tax year. Ugh, just all of that. I hate it.
And how do you get yourself to do it?
Actually, that's a good question. In the past, one year I remember thinking, I'm just going to take myself off to a cafe. I'm going to like indulge in this nice big extra large latte with caramel. And then I sat down, opened my laptop, and I was like, right, I'm doing nothing else. Turn my phone off, and then that actually really helped. I should do that again.
There you go. So you change your environment. Do you ever use accountability? Like I hate it. So I use my assistant, Danny. She helps me with all that stuff as far as, and I'm like, let's meet on such and such a day. Do you ever use accountability or other
Yeah,
people when
yeah,
you're doing the
yeah.
finances?
Hmm.
Who it's not as daunting for them, or just doing it with them is.
It'll usually be my husband, because he's like, come on, let's like get it done. It's not a big deal. And I'm like, yes, it is. And then like our bookkeeper or someone.
So we have these systems and these minds. I talk about systems, mindsets, habits, and routines. So systems is one thing, mindsets is another thing, and then habits and routines I personally lump together. And that's what I call the executive function trifecta. Those are the things that we need in order to really build a decent skill set, so that we can navigate the world and have some choices in this lifetime. And
Mm. So what are the I'm thinking of some kids. Obviously you support a lot of kids and a lot of families. What are some of the things that that kids struggle with in terms of executive function, and why do some kids struggle more than others? Because you obviously have a particular um type of kid that you work with. It's I as a kid was very like, I'm the youngest of three. I was a people pleaser. I was very agreeable. I was a good girl. Like, I got my stuff done. I did relatively well at school. On the other hand, if I look at someone like maybe my brother, or even my husband who has ADHD, my husband has ADHD, like we share stories about, like, he has said school seemed like 150% harder for me than anyone else. And he said, I would look at other kids and I would be like, how do you know where we're supposed to be next and like what book you need? And I was like, it was just in your diary, or it was in the notes, or it was on your calendar. Like, and he was like, but I just didn't know. I couldn't get it. I was like, how do you know what we're supposed to do? And he was like, I just felt so lost. It was so hard.
that's a great question. So We can look at the nature and nurture idea there, and we can say that as far as nature is concerned, your executive function developmentally came online sooner and more effectively, but also, here's the but also. You just by virtue of having a little bit better executive function when you were younger, when the teacher said something like, "Hey, everybody, get out your planner and write this down," and you said you're being a good little girl, and you were very focused, so your ability to focus on them and ignore distractions of the other kids' pencil scratching or the fish tank in the corner of the room or whatever, and focus on that teacher allowed you to pull out your calendar, your notebook, and jot that down. And over years, you have had thousands of micro experiences refining your those skill sets so that by the time, let's say you and your husband, let's say we're both 18, let's assume you were the exact same age, born on the same day. When you were both turned 18, you have had thousands of experiences of using your executive function in a more focused, linear way than he had. So now he has had thousands of other experiences in certain domains that he would be developmentally better at than you would be at that point. But when it comes to executive function, which are these things that we need to be able to get stuff done I mean, we use it to get everything done. So we use it, like I said, to play video games and do all sorts of things. But when it comes to people who struggle with this, the problem is only when it's a non-preferred activity that you're avoiding doing that needs to be done for your own well-being or your own goals.
Oh, that's a big point because that's huge when it's a non-preferred activity. So I can be like so efficient at tidying or cleaning or cooking, and my husband can be super efficient. Like you should see him playing a video game or doing something on the computer. I'm like, I would like to poke my eyes out, and he's trying to explain why this goes over there and how he creates that and does this stuff on the computer. And I'm like, oh my God, my brain goes like, bye. I just can't. And then when he has to vacuum, years ago, he would vacuum like half the house and need to take a break. He was like, okay, I'm done. I'll come back to it. I'm like, it's just like a few more minutes. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Yeah, but the nervous system, something you talk a lot about, the emotional intelligence, right? Like he literally, after vacuuming for a few minutes, became slightly dysregulated and needed to take a break. You became slightly dysregulated with the tech things and needed to take a break. So we can look then at different models of therapy or different models of productivity, or we could look at all sorts of things, and there are cool ways to look at this stuff. But either way, it does come back to emotional regulation and emotional dysregulation. So he's becoming dysregulated. He wants to be regulated, so he stops the activity. Now, we can think about this with something I haven't mentioned yet with executive function. And imagine if maybe even to this day doesn't know this about himself, or maybe he does, or maybe this isn't about him. But imagine that his senses are overwhelmed, and that sound of the vacuum cleaner is in a different experience than your experience of the sound of the vacuum cleaner. Doesn't bother you at all, but for him, it's this hideous, groveling, threatening sound. He may, and I don't know if he feels like this or not, but for a lot of us, we have sensory things going on where things are so intense that that's taking up a lot of brain power, and it makes it even harder to access our executive function because our sensory systems are overwhelmed.
Okay, I love that you said, what did you say? It's taking up a lot of brain power. So it's not like a choice. Now that we know a lot more about each other and we talk about our sensory systems, we talk about emotional intelligence and dysregulation and things like that. Like we have come to be so much more together on the same page.
Mm.
This is so funny. This wasn't where this conversation was going to go, but here we are. But it's honestly, and I see my kids, like I'm so much more patient and understanding and compassionate to him when he needs a break or can't do or doesn't want to do something. And then with my kids as well, like I think my kids are 7 and 10, so they're still young. Um, But I look at them and their behavior, and now that I know just a little, like I know a fraction of about executive function compared to you, but even that makes me go, oh, like I get what's going on here. Like no wonder, or I could see that happening, rather than like, what are you doing? Like stop it. Why are you being so ridiculous? Like hurry up. I don't care. It's just, it's, I don't know. Do you find that that really helps families when you explain it?
Oh yeah, yeah. And just the why you're being so ridiculous about the let's talk about the sensory stuff even a little bit more. But yeah, why you're being so ridiculous, like that thing is so easy, that thing whatever, but the let's talk about the sensory. Why you're being so ridiculous? Like I used to feel like there's something wrong with me that other people are not annoyed by X, Y, and Z and just like why is and now I can understand and like now I can just articulate it. Okay, I'm really overwhelmed with this right now. I'm leaving. Well, if we're at a party or something, and it's just like, okay, there's a lot of people, and my girlfriend and I had people over last week, and she probably 90% of the time wasn't in the party like but we balance each other really well like that. She can do her thing, do her introvert thing, I can do my extrovert thing, but like it gets really intense for her. Now for me, once it starts getting late, after I've been extrovert, I call it we joke around, but I call it extroverting. After I've been extroverting for 3 hours, I'm hitting a wall. So I have my friendly way of kicking my friends out of the house when I have people over, and I'm like, all right, everybody, and let's talk about executive function again. Now, me as an adult, I'm like, okay, I don't want to clean up after all my friends. We just had 20 people over. Everybody brought food. It was great, blah blah. But I don't want to clean up after everybody. So I'm like, okay, will some people help me clean up before y'all leave? I'm kicking y'all out. It's 9 o'clock. Like for me, that's getting late. But the point is that like I think what you were alluding to also is like getting to know each other in a different way changes the conversation. Getting to know your kid in a different way changes the conversation because they're able to say, oh, my kids, what's going on with their senses right now? Maybe what's going on in their mind with thinking about their friendships right now? Like what kinds of things are impacting their ability to do whatever? Do they not have a system for doing what I'm asking them to do? Do they not know where to start? It allows us to ask very different questions.
Oh, that's really good. Okay, so what are some resources? I know you have something coming up. If parents are thinking, "Oh, this is ticking a lot of boxes," or "How do I find out more?" Let's talk about that because you have something pretty amazing that's coming up. It comes up every year, TPOS.
Well, I do TiVos. Yeah, it's a summit, the Executive Function Online Summit. This was the original Executive Function Summit. I'm on year 6, and I want to A, get the word out around the world about executive function, and B, help parents figure out actionable solutions. So I'm very much, when I talk to my speakers, like you're one of our speakers this year, I talk about what actions can parents take? What can they do? I want parents to walk away from every talk saying, okay, I know what to do to help my kid this fall. So yeah, executivefunctionsummit.com. That's a resource. My website and vlogs and YouTube podcasts, but also resources. I guess there are so many resources and there's so many amazing people out there doing such good work with kids. But executive function resources don't have to say the word executive function anywhere. For example, you may have, like, you have a 10-year-old. You may be able to hire a 15-year-old kid to work with your kiddo on executive function this fall. Never say the word executive function and just ask the kid, can you help my kiddo learn to be more organized and use their calendar this year? And that's executive function. I mean, it's not just planners and organization, but it's emotional regulation, it's prioritization, it's focus and concept. But so, yeah, there's so many resources. My summit, yeah, I love. I think I'm very proud of that. But there's so many good books and podcasts and things out
Yeah.
there.
When does your summit start?
That is August 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Okay, so it's coming up soon. So
Yeah.
next month, yeah, because this will come out end of July, and so it's
Back to
four.
school time.
Yeah, is it 4 days? Did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And give us a bit of a what can parents expect if they sign up
Oh,
to the summit?
yeah. So you sign up for free. You come for the 4 days. We have a VIP pass if you want to buy that. But the free 4 days, the idea is really try to take as much of that time to immerse yourself. So when we immerse ourselves in anything, let's say that I want to learn how to play volleyball, which I don't play volleyball, and I went to a 4 day weekend and I just summer, I would be so far ahead of the game. Or if I play a lot of guitar, let's say I did a 4 day workshop on that, I could really accelerate So immersion, immersion, immersion. Immerse yourself in whatever you want to learn about. In this case, immerse yourself in, I think we have about 40 experts this year, and just try to do as much of it as you can. Take notes, learn as much as you can, and get practical ideas for the fall. If you want the VIP pass, you keep it forever, and it's filled with more resources. And it's the way I designed it is it's easy for people to execute on and to use throughout the year to help your kiddo. But yeah, and I am very proud of, I say, what comes from the heart goes to the heart, and getting speakers like you that are heart centered, like getting people who are really not salesy and weird like that, and who are really present with me when I'm doing the interview. And I don't like when I see things that just feel disconnected. So we have people who are really coming from the heart, and the parents feel it.
And so if you're maybe a parent and you're coming along to the summit thinking about, your child's executive function, do you have parents who come along and then realize, oh my God, this stuff is really helpful for me too?
That's an excellent question. More often than you would believe. Yeah, so many parents are like, "Oh my gosh, I use your stuff myself. I use these ideas from." I mean, all the cool thing is, and it's probably similar in your work, like it's not about the specific technique in that Seth has the best this, that, and the other planner system, or this person has the best, organization thing, or this or that. None of that matters. What matters is the principles behind the thing. Principles. If you have principles around your organizing, your planning, and your prioritizing, and you're getting self started when you feel resistant, and you're working with your emotions, and you have a toolkit around that stuff, then you can adapt all sorts of techniques if you understand the principles. So yeah, a lot of parents are like, "Oh my gosh, I relate to this." I think it's also very validating for parents who start to, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree often, most of the time, actually. And for them to be able to, I think a lot of parents, it takes them back to their childhood. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I remember how hard that was for me." And they start to understand and connect the dots of how it's impacted their entire life. So
Yeah.
yeah, parents often find that, yeah, it's the same tools, but
Yeah.
they get to apply them to their own lives. A great thing about parents also who have executive function challenges is that they are often like, "Well, how am I hear this question so much. How am I supposed to help my kid if I have these struggles myself?" The fact is that you are wherever you are in life because you have created tons of compensatory strategies, of workarounds, of really cool ways of making it work for you. You're saying, Stephanie, to execute on that. Now you don't have like executive function challenges in the same sort of developmental way, but when you struggle to execute on your finances, you went to the coffee shop, created a great environment for yourself, dug your heels in for a while, like you made your own strategy.
Yeah.
So you parents, they're right in front of your face. It may not have a fancy, cool, fun name or something with a such and such Stephanie Pinto technique for executing on finances, but you parents look right in front of your face. You have done a million things to make your life easier. And when you start seeing those more clearly, you can help your kid come up with their own customized ones.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay, that's awesome. All right, as we finish up, do you have I sometimes like to hear stories, and I think stories really stick with people. Do you have a story of a family or a kiddo that you've helped, or something that you could share with us that kind of shows us, you sometimes I used to have as a therapist these kids that stuck in my mind, and where they started and where we kind of where they came from and things like that. Is there anything that you want to share before we wrap up?
Oh gosh. I got this email on July 20th, so yesterday.
Mm.
And this email out of the blue from a student that I used to work with. And I just pulled it up.
Yes.
This is not scripted for everybody listening. And
Let's go.
I literally have this right here. So I where I'm gonna I'll read you a little bit of this, but what I'm trying to illustrate with this is that the most important thing when you ask me about a story about a kiddo that's really had a lot of change in their life, what matters the most with our kids is the people in their life. So you, the person listening right this second, I don't care if you use my resources or not. I don't care if you use Stephanie's. I don't care what you do, but that kid needs you, and they need your heart and they need your presence. And the more you do your own self care and your own deep inner work on yourself, the better off you are with that kid. And the more you build relationship with that kid, the better you are for that kid. So, like, the secret to my work, and maybe you would say the same thing, Stephanie, I don't know, but the secret to my work, like, while I have great strategies and ideas and ways of communicating stuff and blah, blah, blah to kids, the secret is that I care. It's the relationship. I make these kids feel seen and I make them feel amazing about who they are. And like, wow, Seth understands me. He gets me. He listens. He takes time to really hear what's going on with me. Like that's it. It's not that complicated. But so I'm gonna tell you this kiddo, I'm not sure. So I started working with her when she was 15. So she said, hope you're doing well. I often think of the way you and others went out of your way to help me. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but this is a really complicated story. This kiddo had a very, very challenging, difficult life. Very, very challenging. Um, and I believe if you weren't there, if it weren't for those people in my life, I'm going to cry. I wouldn't be here today. So, first, thank you for all your support and understanding and guidance personally and academically. I'm sure at this point in your career, you truly make an impact on people. Nonetheless, I hope this email is a nice reminder. I don't, you don't, Stephanie, until we get like an email like this, like we don't know what lands. You can relate to this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh.
She said, with that said, I've had some very deep rooted shame, and unfortunately, I continued to struggle for years. Things only took a turn for me around the end of 2022, and she was awarded the Employee of the Year at her job as a medical receptionist. And up until recently, she planned to pursue a career in medicine as it seemed to come easy to her, blah, blah, blah. But she says that she decided to go a different route, which is what we want for our kids, that better suits her strengths and interests. Um, and she'll be applying to go to college full time as a non-traditional student and yada yada. But what's really interesting is she said she chose not to earn her GED. Instead, she repeated all of high school online through an accredited institution, blah, blah. So this, and then she ends the letter here, and I won't read the end of it to you, but this is just like what happens. I'm working with this kiddo who's 15, 16, 17. Has the most intense struggles you can imagine a human being having. I show up. She's like, everything was resistance. I don't want to. I don't need that. Blah blah. And I'm like, cool. All right. What can we do today? What can we make progress on? Blah blah blah. And we're just trying to like get little bits of progress and planting seeds and just always listening to hear her and hearing her and whatever. And to know that when I stopped working with her, I had no idea what happened to her. Every once in a while, I hear from somebody every few months and get a little update, but really didn't hear much over the years, and so you just don't know, and that stinks. I think also for teachers too, like they work with kids for a year of their life, and then the kids go off to another school or they graduate, and you always wonder where your students are, but so that I think that what's really important in like this story like this is that I showed up week after week being like, you know what? You're awesome. Yeah, but blah, 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 but I'm not, blah, blah. Cool. Well, I think you are, and you got this, but I don't got it, blah, blah, blah. And, just the showing up and being like, she knows that I believe in her, you know? And your kids, Stephanie, and for those of you listening, you don't have to do anything perfectly, but always go back to your defaults. Like write them down and say them every time you end a conversation, every time you enter an interaction, or every time after if you've had a rough day with your kiddo and it wasn't going so well, always ending the day and being like, I love you. You're awesome. You're amazing. Here's the 7,000 reasons I love you. I'm so grateful for you, whatever. And I know some of you out there like, but my kid doesn't want to hear that, blah, 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 whatever. Make it known however you need to make it known all the time. I believe in you. I love you. I'm here for you. Let me know how I can be helpful. And they have to keep hearing that over and over because it matters. That is why I, Seth, am here today. That is because of the people who did that for me. And I don't know enough about your story, Stephanie, but I know for this kiddo too, it's like people who cared about her and took time.
Wow, powerful. Whew. I'm just
It's
gonna
funny
let
that
that
you asked that because
sit.
yeah.
And that just came in yesterday. Wow, that's meant to be.
Yeah, she said her application requires an educational letter of recommendation, and I immediately thought of you because you had the greatest impact as a teacher mentor. Like
Whoa.
I didn't know that. You don't know that.
Ah,
You just show up. And for those of you that don't know that you're impacting your kid, you are. You just keep showing up.
whoa. Well, Seth, I want to say a massive thank you for showing up. Not just today, for the people who are listening, but the people that you work with, and especially the kids. Yeah, I agree with her. You make such an impact, and I think a lot of us don't know the impact that we make, and we're just trying to do our bit. And here are the 7,000 reasons why I think you're amazing. List them off, but thank you for what you do, and I hope this message has really landed on a lot of ears, and I hope a lot of people head to what was the link again for TFOS?
ExecutiveFunctionSummit.com or SethPerler.com, but ExecutiveFunctionSummit.com.
Cool. Okay, we're going to put all those links in the show notes so you guys can grab it. All right, Seth, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy.
Thanks, Stephanie, and thank you everybody for listening and taking time to learn stuff about helping your kiddo.
Hey guys, it's Steph again. So I wanted to give you a quick little bit of info about the TFOS Summit that is coming up very soon. It's August 9th to 12th, so it runs for 4 days. It's completely free. It is all online. This is Seth's biggest event of the year, and I want to give you a little bit of info. There are kind of 4 things I want you to know about this summit. First one is it's going to give you game-changing practical strategies that you can actually implement proactively to support a kid or a student who struggles with executive function skills, especially the ones that we need for success in school and life. Second thing is, this summit is going to help you build an exceptional understanding of your child's executive function needs. Third, it means you don't have to waste your precious time trying to figure out how to help your child this year. And fourth thing is, it's pretty cool that this is ultimately teaching the world about executive function so that more kids can get the support that they need. So like I said, it's completely online and free. All you need to do is sign up at executivefunctionsummit.com. I'm going to put that stuff in the show notes so you guys can find out more about it. I am one of the speakers at the summit. So I shared obviously about emotionally intelligent parenting and using emotional intelligence to support executive function skills. So I hope you love that session, but there are a bunch more that I know you're going to love. So I would love if you jump on. I will put the link in the show notes so that you can go and get your ticket, and it's starting very soon.